Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our weekly InsurTech webinar series. Today's topic is around the future of work and workers' comp and is inspired by the many ways in which we've seen risk for workers and workplaces change over the past few weeks. Some of those shifts include, first, frontline workers being required to work in conditions of severe risk. Second, a big shift in how abruptly folks have been required to work remotely. And third, we're beginning to see, as economies are reopening, questions of risk without access to mass vaccines as well as testing. These complications, in our opinion, have created some complicated new questions around the space of workers' comp. And so to that end, we're excited to kick today's discussion off with a keynote presentation from Chris Folkman, who's a director of product management over at Guidewire. Chris, over to you.
Great, thanks, Norjeet. And I'm just going to share my screen. If you could just stop sharing and I will get my slide up. Thank you. Great, well, thank you very much for listening today. A little bit about myself. I've been involved in workers' compensation for more than 15 years. First as a broker, then on the carrier side, working for a startup comp carrier that we sold to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. And now I'm building analytics out for this line. And I think there's some really important dynamics in play for workers' compensation right now due to COVID-19. And I'd just like to take a few minutes today to walk through what might be changing, how I think it could be changing, and why it's changing. And I think I'll cover three different areas in the next 12 to 15 minutes, starting with the underwriting impact, the challenges of the changing work environment that we're seeing, the claims impact, and we're seeing a lot of action here right now, and then finally the product impact, the potential innovations that are on the horizon in terms of how the product is being sold, packaged, and developed. So I'll start with a point of underwriting. And I think the headline here is that workers' compensation underwriting will be changing, particularly in white collar industries. With a remote distributed workforce, I think we are facing the decline of what workers' comp underwriters call the four-walled operation. And this is where they can look inside a business and get a really good understanding of what happens daily inside that business. Now, underwriters really like the certainty of businesses whose work is done on premises because it's easy to monitor safety behavior. There's really clear accountability for operational protocols, and you know exactly what the employees are doing and when. So with technology-enabled, highly distributed, highly remote workforces, this underwriting calculus completely changes. You're no longer underwriting a single location. Employees can be spread out across literally thousands of locations. Schedules are not predictable. And compensability becomes very unclear because what is on the clock anymore? What is an on-the-clock injury? What is an occupational injury? So because of these changing dynamics, I think underwriting is going to be changing in a couple of key areas. Most importantly, I think work from home guidelines will be explicitly underwritten for, just as worker safety programs are today in high hazard industries. You know, if an underwriter receives a submission for something like a framer or a roofer or a sheet metal manufacturer in a heavy industry, they're going to ask very specific questions about the steps that are taken to ensure worker safety. And in the same way, I think underwriters are going to start asking very explicit questions about how work from home programs are administered. There are a lot of ergonomic considerations. There are questions around set working hours, meeting protocols, the employee handbook and its treatment of work from home programs. And finally, who within a business is accountable for remote work administration, what their background is, and what their performance incentives are. So I think these are some of the questions that we might see appearing on the workers' comp supplemental applications, or potentially even in the Accord application itself, starting relatively soon. Moving to the claims side, the statutory rules around claims, as we're seeing right now with COVID-19, are changing. Now, I think it's important to step back and talk about the foundation of workers' compensation eligibility, which is a test that claims adjusters apply called AOE-COE. That is, an injury has to arise out of an employment, and it has to be sustained in the course of employment in order to be eligible for workers' compensation coverage. Now, with remote workforces, it can be difficult, if not impossible, to make this determination. So I think it's not unreasonable to believe that many injuries which would have been considered non-occupational will end up being paid by the workers' compensation system. Now, further complicating this is that injury presumption rules are changing with COVID-19. An injury presumption is a situation where if a worker suffers an injury, that injury is automatically presumed to be work-related. Now, there are two types of presumptions, the strictest of which is called a conclusive presumption, meaning that if you're injured, it doesn't matter what you were doing or where you were, you're automatically covered. Now, changes to these presumption rules are happening right now as we speak. In California, the governor recently tweeted about having streamlined the process, the presumption rules for frontline workers exposed to COVID-19. And there's proposed legislation in 9 additional states in various stages to do similar things. So this is a very fluid situation. The California State Bureau, called the WCRB, the largest independent state bureau for workers' compensation, recently issued a cost estimate assuming a conclusive presumption for frontline workers contracting COVID-19, where the costs to the California workers' comp system could be, as you can see here, up to $33 billion in California alone, depending on various assumptions about infection rates. Now, these costs, of course, would be borne by insurers alone that are writing comp in the California domicile. And I think the takeaway here is that small changes to the presumption rules, because of the enormous exposure base, can result in big changes to loss costs. And sometimes the changes to these rules are made retroactively after insurers have already priced their policies, after they have done the underwriting. So this understandably makes insurers a little bit nervous because they can't price for something and then have the rules change on them after the fact. This happened retroactively in California back to March, the change that was just made that Governor Newsom tweeted about. And it's not the first time that the rules have changed retroactively to the detriment of insurers in California. Most recently, the retroactive rule change occurred after the California wildfires in 2018, where victims of wildfires were given free extended replacement cost coverage on their homeowners' policies, whether or not they had purchased it. So this makes California as a jurisdiction pretty difficult to price for, and it's just one example of what we're seeing in social inflation trends that are not just happening in California, but throughout the United States in many jurisdictions. They are driving loss costs up, and they are cited as a key reason for reserve deterioration that you're seeing in a number of liability and workers' compensation quarterly earnings calls. So that's a little bit on the claims side. Now let's talk about the product and packaging side. I think COVID-19 is going to accelerate a number of changes into how the workers' compensation product is developed, is packaged, and is sold. And there are a couple of areas where I think we might see a lot of innovation in the next couple of years. The first is what's called 24-hour care. This is where you merge the benefit delivery for all injuries, whether they are occupational or non-occupational. And I think this makes a lot of intuitive sense, because if we are currently blurring the line between at work and at home, then this kind of bundling could potentially deliver a lot of cost savings. But of course, the devil's in the details here. Workers' comp and accident and health are very, very different lines of business. They have different claims adjudication systems. They have different fee schedules. They have very different coverages. Now, there have been a number of pilot programs that rolled out these kind of 24-hour care programs since 1992, and there has been some modest success, mainly with large self-insured corporates that merge self-insured workers' comp with their health programs. But so far, we really haven't seen a way to be able to bundle these together at scale in a way that thousands of employers can take advantage of the cost savings. I think mainly due to the administrative and bureaucratic inertia surrounding merging together two fundamentally different systems. But with the changes that we are seeing today, with the line being blurred between on the clock and off the clock, with healthcare becoming less and less affordable every year, I think that 24-hour care's time may have come, and this is definitely an area to watch over the next couple of years. The second area to watch is what I'll call turnkey home offices. It's vendors that administer remote work situations on behalf of employers. And I believe that we have one of them presenting today a little later. I think these kind of vendors may play a role in the future of remote work that's rapidly unfolding before us in two potential ways. First, they might be able to serve as a distribution partner to workers' compensation insurers, acting as a kind of broker, packaging together services and pre-loss mitigation with insurance. And second, as an information provider. These vendors are inside workers' homes. They have information about how work equipment is being used. And this information may be valuable as a source of underwriting insight. I think underwriters are going to work very hard to better understand work from home arrangements. And vendors that facilitate these kind of work arrangements could serve as great sources of intel that can feed this kind of underwriting insight. So these are two areas that I think are definitely ones to watch where we might see a lot of innovation unfold relatively quickly in a post-COVID-19 world. So I've covered in rapid order underwriting, a little bit about claims, and a little bit about the product. Let me just leave you with the future of the line and where do we go from here. Now, I think in InsurTech, especially, we tend to overstate the short-term impact of things and then understate the long-term transformative impact. So it's important that I think we take a balanced view here. But things are going to accelerate in terms of the changes that are happening. We say, and the title of today's webinar says that this is the new normal. Now, this is not the first time the insurance industry has said this before. We've said this is the new normal after the 9/11 attacks, and devastating event and the $45 billion insured loss then. We've said it after Hurricane Katrina and the unprecedented storm surge in New Orleans. We said it with climate change after Hurricane Harvey in 2017 and the California wildfires in 2018, that this is the new normal in terms of climate. And we're saying this is the new normal with COVID-19 in 2020. Things are definitely changing, but the $40 billion workers' compensation line is here to stay. I don't think it will be disrupted because as a social policy, workers' compensation works pretty well. You know, in 1911, employers and workers struck a deal that employers would take care of injured workers. They would cover their lost wages, their medical care, their death benefits if necessary. And in exchange, the workers gave up the right to sue their employer for this. And this grand bargain, as they call it, has held up pretty well for more than 100 years. COVID-19 will just accelerate changes that were already underway, albeit slowly, in the workers' compensation line of business. So if there's any call to action for the workers' comp industry, I think it's that now is the time to get real about changes to underwriting, to process, to technology that have been on the back burner or in the R&D lab for years, and it's time to move it to the front burner because these changes are coming quickly to accommodate the new challenges that we face today. And the carriers who can make this jump, so to speak, will be those who succeed in the new world that we face. So thank you very much. And with that, I will hand over presenter. Norjeet, back to you.
Great, Chris. Thanks so much for the thoughtful presentation, as well as kind of the simple framework around claims underwriting as well as product. Since we have a few minutes left over, keen to ask you a few questions touching on some of the points you've made. The first, you spoke a little bit about a new normal that was discussed post 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, as well as the climate change events of 17 and 18. I'm wondering, kind of given those past discussions, given that there have been these macro changes and effects on the insurance industry, any sort of impressions on how prepared you feel like the insurance industry has been for this macro event?
Yeah, you know, in terms of remote work and distributed workforces, I think they are relatively well prepared because this has been kind of a slow burn where workforces become a little more distributed every year, and this has happened for more than a decade. And now, especially in the insurance industry, some of the stodgiest operations that I have known in the insurance industry have gone to almost complete remote situations. So I think in terms of that, we're pretty well prepared. In terms of the changes to the rules on presumptions, I mean, these kind of big things happen, you know, every 8 or 9 years. In 2011, there were some retroactive changes in the comp system from the Alvarez, Ogilvy, Guzman cases, which was a very, very difficult change for the workers' compensation industry to stomach. You know, I think we're a little less prepared for the rule changes and how quickly they happen. But you know, with the right analytics, with the right underwriting response, with the right accommodation on the claims desk, I think we as an industry can adapt and succeed in the face of these changes.
And have you seen any sort of best practices so far? Or do you imagine any sort of short-term best practices in terms of across kind of that framework of claims underwriting product, how you think insurers might respond, how they should respond? Any sort of signals so far that we're kind of moving in the right direction in terms of having the proper safety for employees, workers, but also having kind of the proper infrastructure that fairly distributes costs back to insurers?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the burden of the cost and what's going to be borne by the insurance industry versus outside, I think that's going to be an ongoing conversation that's not going to be resolved overnight, and it's going to be at a public policy level. But I think insurers, they have relatively good trade representation to have a common voice, I've seen, particularly in the workers' comp industry. So I think those kind of, the best practices for that would be get involved in the conversation. On the underwriting and claims front, you know, I think I've seen a number of big changes happen quickly in the workers' comp industry, particularly in California, which is a little bit of a roller coaster of a place to do business in. And I think the key best practice, whether you're on the underwriting desk or the claims desk, is when these changes happen, drive consistency so that every underwriter is adhering to the same set of appetite guidelines and rules and asking the same questions, and the same thing on the claims adjudication front. Given the new rules, you have to accommodate, and everybody has to get over the line and accommodate the new rules. And claims practices with settlement and subrogation and utilization review, you know, whoever is overseeing the whole operation, I think consistency is really the key to success.
And as you're kind of thinking about consistency, I think one of the big questions right now is how states will be consistent with one another, right? So obviously very federated system in terms of very unclear what the federal response might be, but even across states, lots of variation we've seen so far in terms of how aggressive they've been with the types of orders, mandates around what insurers and employers need to cover.
Yeah.
Maybe based on what you've seen, you know, kind of in response to some of these past big events, do you see more consistency coming alongside states? Do you expect there to be some type of sequence where there's a best practice state example and most other states adopt that type of response?
Yeah, in the United States being 56 different insurance jurisdictions, the 50 states plus some of the other ones like Puerto Rico and American Samoa and stuff like that, it's a very difficult patchwork to navigate. Usually there are a few leading jurisdictions that tend to be the biggest ones, California for comp, Florida for wind, Illinois tends to do its own thing a lot, and a lot of people sort of fall in line with what's happening in those jurisdictions. But I think the body that can really step up and take some leadership here is the NAIC, which is sort of this national model organization for administering the changes and for driving consistency across different jurisdictions. But I think there will be a number of states that take a wait and see approach and see how the legislation that's pending resolves itself, and then take action after that. But I really see the quarterly meetings at the NAIC as an ideal venue for everyone to get together and get on the same page of how we can face these new changes together.
Great. And one of the questions that's kind of come from the audience, how do you see the framework around privacy and kind of the balancing of the need to protect the privacy of employees and kind of the infrastructural changes that you touched on need to happen to create a proper framework as well, right? Different types of data sources that we might be gathering. So any sort of signals or impressions on kind of the privacy side of the equation so far?
Sure, and in terms of worker privacy, I think there are already some best practices for in a remote work situation that I think we can really amplify and accelerate. In a home office, I think it's really important to draw a very clear distinction between work and non-work in terms of the technology, the devices, the spaces, the schedules, and stick to that schedule. And I think, some of it like work VPNs, dedicated work devices, there are some IT best practices for that. But I think we need to get a lot more serious about that in defining within a home office exactly what constitutes work and the protections that we're going to put around that, and then exactly what constitute not work and the privacy guarantees that we're going to put around that.
Great. And last question, since we're at time now, and I think a good segue into our next part of the discussion, where do you kind of see some of the opportunities for startups, right? So across this framework of claims, underwriting, product, where do you see startups being able to kind of contribute some answers to some innovation changes that insurers, many of our partners in the audience today, might need to make?
Sure. When I think across underwriting, claims, and distribution, I think there are a number of areas where startups can contribute immediately. Underwriting, I think, as on the analytics front, the analytics game in workers' compensation is interesting because all of the coverage is the same. It's statutory coverage. So the analytics are going to be around matching the price to the exposure. And in this new work from home world where the lines are blurred, better analytics that can help do that will be very helpful to insurers. On the claims side, I think helping better adjudicate these new rules and drive consistency across all of the claims adjusters and best practices, whether that's technology or sort of people, I think the industry could use some help there. And then in terms of the packaging and product, it's a new world there. So will we see 24-hour care? Will we see a lot more focus on remote work? Those are sort of the two areas in terms of how the product's bundled, how it's distributed, how it's sold, and various types of insight that startups can help feed back to underwriters so that they can match that true price to the exposure. I think there are a ton of roles for startups out there.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, Chris, thanks so much for the time as well as the insights today. Eager to keep this conversation going.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Rachel, over to you to kind of start off the startup presentations today.
Great. Thanks so much, Nordjeet, and thank you so much, Chris. Welcome back, everybody, to our Thursday weekly webinar. We have 4 really great startup presentations for you today, but just as always, a few housekeeping items for you. Please remain muted, unless you are presenting. Our startups will have Q&A portions timed into their presentation, so please use the general chat or Q&A question and answer box at the bottom of your screen here. And there'll also be a poll when there's a minute left for our startup presentations, asking if you would like to connect with them. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mike with Evolution IQ. Welcome, Mike.
Hi there. Thank you all.
Great. Take it over.
All right. It's letting me know that I cannot share while you are sharing. There we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us today, and I appreciate that everyone is making this work from home. We would prefer to be with you all in Sunnyvale, but here we are. We appreciate the time. So we're Evolution IQ, and we deliver 2 market-tested artificial intelligence solutions to the insurance industry, specializing in workers' compensation and in group disability. The first is IQ Priority, which is a segmentation engine, the goal of which is to accurately and very early on in the claims process, let you know where a claim is headed, how large it's going to be, and specifically, what's the optimal amount of human examiner interaction on the claim versus a more auto adjudication or low touch approach. We're going to touch on that mostly today because it's a huge need today in the current COVID environment. The second is IQ Fraud. We've had a lot of success there, both in comp and disability, looking at open claims, looking at patterns of fraud within the individual claimant themselves. So to start, the situation that we find ourselves in is extremely unique, and it's one that puts a lot of pressure on the claims organization specifically. So we have surging claim volumes. We have folks that are contracting COVID or other injuries related to the illness or just the normal course of business. We have claim complexity because of those injuries and because of the COVID relationship. And at the same time, we have the claim staff who is overnight, essentially, had to transition to working from home. So we have a situation in which most claim organizations are stretched more than they typically are. Adjusters are asked to staff more claims than they typically are. And staffing up in the short term doesn't seem feasible, as a lot of claim staffs are telling us, look, I have my adjusters who are calling in sick now. We have to do more with less. So that's what we really answered the call to. And I really appreciate Chris from Guidewire kind of setting the stage here on driving consistency in the claim adjustment process. We offer that in spades. So our goal here on the IQ Priority side is to identify claim value and complexity on day one and route it to the appropriate course of action with adjusters and examiners. We've had production engagements where we have literally reduced the average number of hours to handle each claim by 40%. And these are at some of your peer carriers. The platform is a very simple schematic and a very complex implementation on our side. We harness all of the claims data from our partners, hundreds of thousands of historical claims, to get a sense of where these claims are headed and the key factors in them. We do this across all the structured and all of the unstructured data within these claims. We also bring in our own large data assets. This is individual, group level, behavioral, and employment level data on where folks work, what are the types of work they're doing, what are previous injuries we've seen of those type of environments, and previous recovery patterns. Both of these data are combined into one single unified process. This is part of our core technology. The point here is we are leveraging the interactions between all this data. Let's talk about what does it mean to be working at a pig farm in Iowa with an individual who has a previous history in this employment and this type of injury. So it's all of this rich complexity. We deliver these insights either within your core claims platform or within our own front-end system to the managers assigning workflow to the front-end examiners. The actual claim segmentation is going to look a lot like what I think a lot of carriers have been working on for the past decade. This diagram should be nothing new to a sophisticated claims organization that has a routing process in place. The difference is that we're going to be able to confidently increase your fast track or whatever equivalent you have at your organization significantly A lot of our engagements right now are running about 55% of typical claims flow into fast track. And we're going to do so much more accurately. And that's the key. You can only increase the fast track bucket to the extent that you can be confident and accurate in your predictions. So a little bit about our recent work. We are over 90% accurate in all of our claim segmentation across all of our production engagements. This is significantly more accurate and almost or equally as importantly, available earlier on in a claim lifecycle than industry standards. So for example, we predict on day one after claim approval where that claim is headed, and then resegment if significant new information comes into the claim. We tailor these buckets to our clients. If you have 5 buckets, 3 buckets, if you run a process where certain claims bubble up to a global liaison, or you have scenarios where you have fast track 1, fast track 2, whatever your process is, we tailor it to you all and to your existing examiner infrastructure. And then we really do reduce a ton of time by increasing that fast track bucket. That's our biggest lever, and making you aware of your larger severity claims up front. Just briefly about us, and then we're going to go to questions. We're a highly technical team. Most of the team is from Google. All have been at Google for more than 5 years. My co-founder was there for a decade and ran their New York machine learning efforts across Waymo, Gmail, and Google Maps at different points of his tenure. In terms of our backers, we have a lot of insurance DNA on the team. We have advisory board members and investors who are CEOs of large insurance companies or reinsurance companies. And we have a lot of money in the bank, which we don't like to brag about, but is important right now because insurtechs, some will fall by the wayside, and we want our partners to know that we are here to see this through. We're going to be around, and we're ready to be a long-term partner to our clients. So with that, I'll pause and take questions.
Great, thanks so much, Mike. Quick question. So why is the team so Google heavy? It
wouldn't be if it didn't have to be. I'll put it that way. It was, it's expensive to hire these types of folks. They have serious careers at Google. The answer is because the data that we're using, the data that we're trying to unlock at these carriers goes a lot deeper than statistical models typically have been. It actually resembles Google level complexity in the type of problems that we're working on. So to extract the insight that we want to from all the different sources of data, all the different types of data contained in claim histories, claim files, you're really talking about sparsity, you're talking about big data, you're talking about unstructured data, you're talking about many, many data sources. And to move all these into a cohesive single model is a far cry from a simplistic data science problem. And so, my partner, Tom, the CEO of our business, he's had a vision from day one that we are going to be the most technically advanced solution in the insurtech world for claims analytics. And we've stuck to that vision. So everyone we hire is a very sophisticated data scientist used to these types of problems and their scope.
Great. And one more quick question, because I think we are out of time here. But if you could touch on what claim systems you've integrated with so far.
Sure. So we can work with many of the open claim systems in comp and in disability. So we do have a partnership, Chris, I appreciate, from Guidewire. We do have a partnership that is open at Guidewire, so we can integrate there, and we can integrate Duck Creek. And any others that people are using, we are open to building an integration for at our cost. If our policy is, if you are our first client on that claim system, the integration is free, because that's an asset that we're building for our future clients.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mike. Please let us know if you want to connect with Mike and the team at Evolution IQ. Thanks again.
Thank you all.
Great. And next up, we're going to hear from Planck.
Hi, my name is Leandro Dalmio. I'm the general manager for Planck in North America. And today I'm going to cover how our platform works, how our clients use us, and of course, more importantly, how value is generated from working with Planck. So we are AI-powered data platform. We're focused on commercial insurance, more specifically, the small and medium business segment. Today, we work with about 40 different carriers in the US. Amongst the top 10, we have 6 of them are clients. But we work with big, large, very complex carriers, as well as smaller ones, niche, focus, specialty ones. So our platform applies pretty much to a very large carrier all the way to a very small, focused niche one. What is that we do? So our platform works this way. With a business name and an address, just test those two inputs. Our platform generates risk insights, underwriting insights, and underwriting answers that will help carriers make smarter decisions. Those outputs, those insights, as we call it, are highly configurable. As you know, we want to provide our carriers with the data that they need, how they need it in order to consume and generate and make better decisions. What are the use cases typically that our clients use our platform for? So there are many more than these four that you see on the screen here, but those are the big ones, I would say. The first one is around submissions, and then involve data pre-fill, right? Or just eliminating questions from the forms. Who wants to answer 50 questions if you can just answer 2, a business name and address? The other group is under underwriting. For instance, it's not about pre-filling an online form, it's about helping underwriters do a better job, saving them time from gathering data, from cleansing data, from validating data, right, that they are receiving. So we'll do that for them very fast, very accurately. Adding additional risk insights. How about if you want to know more about that small, medium businesses you're writing or you're about to write? So do you want to add more questions? Planck can answer those questions without having to ask the questions to the agent or even to the business owner. Then there are also policy monitoring and renewals, 2 additional use cases that some of our clients use us for. Think about understanding the exposure of your portfolio against the market. Are you overexposed in some risk attributes or underexposed? How pricing would affect that? Can you change your pricing and impact your loss ratios? Renewals, streamlining the whole process, helping the underwriters validate the data, getting an up-to-date view of those risks. It's huge. It saves a ton of time and it allows them to make better decisions. These are just 4, and they're not mutually exclusive use cases. Most of our clients, as a matter of fact, have multiple use cases leveraging Planck. How is the platform really doing this? Well, a minute is not enough to describe in detail, of course, but think about those 2 inputs. It's all it takes. Then the platform in this next step is to collect everything there is out there about that entity, right? So with the business name and address, the machine first goes out, our platform, and collects raw data, pictures, unstructured text from posts, articles, customer reviews, satellite data, you name it, it doesn't matter. Second step is data processing. We'll then process that raw data, and the way I put it is, we'll transform that into information, from raw data to information. All that information is then brought together to find the truth, as we say it, right? So the last step to generate the underwriting insights, it's really finding the accurate answer for an underwriting question, for a risk insight, bringing many, many sources together into one final decision. And this is really how we achieve the high accuracy, and I'm talking about over 90%, over 95% in some cases, even higher, that our platform provides. Lastly, it's an API-based integration for those real-time use cases, but we're very flexible in terms of how we can deliver our data to our clients. Less than 2 weeks, we've done it even faster than that. Acceptance test us. We always say that, we like to put our mouth where our money is, or money where our mouth is. So test us, right? And you're going to see for yourself using your data. Ultra robust. Ugh.
Great. And we do have Leandro on the line. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. A few questions popped in for you. How do you measure the accuracy of your results on the platform?
Okay. We label our own data, so we're able to validate ourselves. And once we go, even before integrating with new client, right? Typically during the proof of concept, we also, either the client themselves are able to validate, how the platform answers the question and provides the inputs, or we do it together in partnership with our clients or prospects.
Great, awesome. And another one here, can Planck's data sets be used in reverse? That is, do you do data mining to identify attractive prospects?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, it's one of the use cases that I did not put up there, those four. But absolutely, yes, especially these days, due to COVID and everything, what we've seen is agents are more focused on renewals because, it's not easy to get new business through the door. So we've got some requests already to play that in reverse, exactly how I describe it.
Great, and maybe one more quick one before we run out of time. But any new data sources that you're considering amidst the pandemic right now?
No, not really new data sources, just how we look at the same data, right? From given the pandemic and workers' comp specifically, of course, payroll became, very, very important, and changes in payroll, changes in number of employees as an insight, as well as some of the different operations of those small, medium businesses, just to adapt to get revenue, right? When the usual ways of getting revenue is not that easy anymore.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Leandro. Let us know again via the poll or emailing myself, Norjeet, the team, if you'd like to connect with Planck. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to hear from Harbor.ai.
Hi, my name is Paul Gagliotti, and I'm CEO and co-founder of Harbor.ai. COVID has changed the way we work. Insurance regulators, insurance carriers, and their distribution partners have expedited their digital transformation. Exposures have changed. Will class code 8006 for a grocery store be rated the same in the new normal? Work from home is here to stay. How will it impact loss exposures? What happens when you trip on your kid's toy during a work conference call? Is COVID even covered by workers' compensation? According to the NCCI, maybe. While workers' compensation laws provide compensation for occupational diseases that arise out of or in the course of employment, many state statutes exclude ordinary diseases of life, like the common cold or flu. Digital distribution of insurance will become the new normal for many insurance products. Insurance carriers, agents, brokers, and insureds will need a dynamic solution to keep up with the fluid environment. Harbor.ai has built an AI-powered digital distribution platform for commercial insurance. We optimize the experience between insureds, brokers via artificial intelligence. Our exchange is frictionless, moving data seamlessly from insured brokers and carriers. It's transparent. Products are presented in a clear and concise fashion. It's liquid. Insured demand matches carrier supply, and it's intelligent. We get rid of forwarded emails and endless PDF attachments. We provide a better product experience for all insureds. It's online, it's faster, it's less effort, and brokers get access to more products with a higher commission for less work, while their carriers can keep up with the dynamic changes of the world we're in today. Our business model is completely transactional. It's totally free to use. No SaaS fees, no lead generation fees, no maintenance fees. We only get a commission in the times deals transact. To talk about our tech, I'll pass it over to Mark, our CTO and co-founder.
Hello, I'm Mark Hatfield, CTO of Harbor.ai. Let me tell you a little bit about the Harbor.ai technology and how we enable a distributed workforce, including in the age of COVID-19. The Harbor.ai Exchange is a platform for all participants in insurance policies. It is infrastructure to automate interactions using artificial intelligence. These interactions may involve people, such as brokers and agents, or systems, such as APIs producing quotes on new policies. We have developed a new insurance data standard to encode all insurance knowledge for use in artificial intelligence, and We train and deploy algorithms using this encoded knowledge as decision models into our infrastructure. We have developed a lot of proprietary technology, but we also leverage existing tools such as TensorFlow for building our models. Artificial intelligence is a broad term that can mean many things. For us, it means, first, we represent knowledge and knowledge graphs that capture the semantic meaning of the data. We then use this graph as the training material for machine learning to make predictions or recommendations. And we use this graph to make logical inferences based on inference rules. And this is how we underwrite particular policy submissions according to strict underwriting requirements. An example real-world interaction that we are enabling for a distributed and distanced workforce is that of an inspection. The exchange may connect a gig agent to an insured. The gig agent can step the insured through an application process. The insured can self-inspect the premises using a mobile app, and the collected underwriting material is sent to the AI-driven MGA for a decision. Our AI assistant facilitates all the interactions among the insured, brokers and agents, and underwriters. Our exchange supports all commercial policy lines, and we are currently operating in all 50 states and DC. We are seeking additional carriers to bring onto our exchange to grow our broker and agent network and additional partnerships. Thank you for watching our presentation today. Please contact us at Harbor.ai to learn more.
Thanks, guys, and welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Rachel.
Awesome. A few questions popped in. First, what does integration look like with you guys?
Absolutely. So we're a cloud-based platform. So an integration could be as simple as creating a new account and starting to use the platform. For our carrier partners, we connect to their APIs, or they can connect to ours. We can also onboard their appetite and underwriting criteria. Depending on the partner, it could be a few days or a few weeks.
Great. And you mentioned the term gig agent. Can you better define what that means for Harbor.ai?
That's a great question. So we're launching the world's first gig agent insurance platform. So imagine an Amazon-style experience where a properly licensed agent can not only buy insurance, but sell it. This is something in the wake of COVID will be very beneficial to those recently unemployed or those looking for a supplemental revenue stream.
Great. And one last question. Again, something you mentioned, an insurance knowledge graph. What does that mean?
So typically data is like trapped in a database and not capturing the meaning of it. So by contrast, a knowledge graph contains additional metadata that captures semantic meaning, which enables more intelligent decisions by artificial intelligence. So it's a graph where data is linked to related things, such as an insured linked to assets, linked to policies, linked to underwriting data, and on and on. This allows keeping all the knowledge in a single standard, so we're able to do things very efficiently and provide a lot of details to not only our insureds, but our carrier partners.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Paul. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Let us know if you'd like to touch base with Paul and the team there. But last but not least, I want to introduce Chris with Firstbase. You online, Chris?
Yep, I am. Just give me 2 seconds. For some reason, my screen just went blank, so I am fighting with technology, unfortunately.
Okay.
With any luck, that should be it.
Looks great.
Awesome. So give me 2 seconds to get to the right page, and I apologize. Cool. So, hey, I'm Chris Hurd, the founder and CEO of Firstbase. At Firstbase, we're building the physical operating system for remote work. Our platform lets companies supply and manage all the physical equipment remote workers need to do great work at home. COVID has accelerated remote work by over a decade in less than 2 months. There were projected to be 33 million full-time remote workers working from home across the EU and USA by 2030 before COVID. There will be something like 36 million as soon as we make it through this. 74% of CFOs have already said their organizations will be more remote going forward. There are currently 255 million desk jobs globally today. And if the people who could work remotely in the US did from home for 50% of the time going forward, US companies would save $1 trillion a year on real estate spend. And that's exactly what we're hearing is about to happen from companies across the entire spectrum, including the commercial real estate brokers who manage that for them. Workers will typically, or they will in the future, operate from home for 50% of the week, and they'll come into the office the rest of the time. And I think the reason remote is so appealing is that it expands a company's talent pool out with the 30-mile radius of their office. And it also gives them something that is far cheaper than providing the real estate space that workers need to operate from there. So literally 10x cheaper to provide that or let them work from home. But I think that's where the big problem is. Getting a remote worker set up from home is broken. It's expensive. It comes with massive upfront costs and capital expense. It's time consuming. Someone in the team has to order the equipment, make sure it gets delivered, follow up when it doesn't, and then try to collect it when a worker leaves. And the third part that we're hearing increasingly is that it's just incredibly risky. Large organizations who have thousands of remote workers are incredibly scared about them getting injured at home and then them getting sued for millions of dollars because they haven't provided the right equipment. And those are the three things that we've created Firstbase to solve. We make it far more cost efficient by companies by letting them amortize the expense of the physical product over the 3-year life cycle of the goods. We make it far more time efficient by giving them a platform to supply and manage everything a remote worker needs instantly. And we just make it far less risky by letting every company have oversight that their workers are using the right ergonomically correct stuff at home. So our platform on the company side lets them select the product catalog their workers will select from. A few examples of that would be desks, chairs, computers, headsets, microphones. We pre-install the software image on the machine so that it arrives to the remote worker already pre-configured, and the company never has to touch any of that equipment before it arrives at the remote worker's home. On the worker side, we give them full control over what their specific package looks like. So the worker gets to choose the color of chair that suits their home environment, the size of desk that suits the space they've got, and ultimately the type of machine that they'll do their best work on top of. And we start with a physical product because it's the stickiest product in the entire remote working stack. But our bigger vision is to create an operating system for remote work that takes care of every need an organization has as it goes increasingly remote. So remote worker insurance, compliance, taxation. And the reason I think that we're the team to deliver this platform is that we've already done this before to far more challenging environments than remote workers' homes. I literally supplied exactly the same equipment to oil rigs off the coast of Africa. My co-founder and CTO did the cybersecurity and technical infrastructure for the US military in their most remote areas of operations spread around the globe. And since we launched the product, or since we launched our waitlist, our demand's exploded. We started taking companies in our waitlist in August last year, and on average, it's grown 62% month over month since then. We had 600 companies on our waitlist on the 1st of March, 1,000 on the 1st of April, and I think it's past 1,600 today. But I think what's more impressive than the number of companies is actually the key decision makers inside of some of those organizations who have signed up to learn more about what we're doing. In terms of our pipeline or attraction, we've closed our first long-term client. That's at 27K ARR today. It's projected to grow to 500K ARR in the next 12 months. We're moving forward with 5 to 10 global companies of all sizes. And yeah, that's us. We're currently out raising our seed round. We've already got half of that committed and happy to take any questions.
Welcome, Chris. Thanks so much.
Hey.
Great. So quick question. What is your roadmap for the remote worker insurance? So what types of employees, maybe by geography, role, company type, will you be offering this insurance to?
Yeah, I think I can speak more generally to the types of companies that are on the wait list rather than the specific roles. So we've got, I think, a heavy bias towards large non-technical enterprises like healthcare companies, financial companies, management consultants, accountants, and lawyers. So for the most part, it's white collar knowledge workers who we'll be offering those products to.
Great, absolutely. And are you able to speak a little bit more about your raise? So what type of raise you're going out for, and what that money will be used for?
Yeah, we're out raising probably somewhere between 1.5 and $2 million. We've already had, I guess, 70% of the bigger figure committed from inside, or sorry, 40% of the bigger figure committed from insiders and a few strategic angels. And yeah, we're just really building out the operational capacity to obviously fulfill not just the customer we're already live with, but the 5 that we're progressing with down the pipeline just now, and then just more generally to be able to lean into that wait list. And I think really take advantage of the unique tailwinds and confluence of circumstance that we're clearly benefiting from right now.
Great. Well, excited for the progress, and thanks so much, Chris. Please let us know if you'd like to connect with Firstbase. I'm happy to shoot over an introduction. Thanks again. Great, and with that, that's a wrap. Thank you guys again so much for joining us for our Thursday weekly webinar. Thank you to Chris from Guidewire and Rajit, our presenting startups. Of course, the magicians Gina and Fonley on the back end. Still have 2 more of these left. Next week, we're diving into adapting to an aging world. But let us know what you'd like to see. If there are any questions, happy to introduce you to any of the speakers that you heard today. Thanks.